It is Monday, November 6, 2017. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And today we are going to have something very, very special. Unfortunately, we did not get our asses kicked at Jiu-Jitsu today, but we do intend to resolve that tomorrow. As for today, though, exactly what we intend to be having going on here is Mr. CryptoRekt will be joining us on the other side of the first dance. And so, I don't want to keep you guys waiting too long because, the man's got to work too, right? So anyway, we'll go ahead and throw down our first dance and into our first music break. We'll get Mr. CryptoRekt on here and let the good times roll from there. And so for a first dance, let's go ahead and throw down the Whispers off of 0 Days by Prong here on Coin Metal. And that was Body Count with the Ski Mask Way. And so now we have with us Mr. CryptoRekt at long last. Hello, sir.
How's it going, buddy?
Very, very well. And how are you this evening?
I am doing pretty damn good, man. I've been looking forward to talking to you live on the radio for a long time.
Oh, really? So, a little bit about yourself up front. What exactly do you do at Verge Currency, sir?
So, what I like to focus on here on the project is I like to do the writing for our black paper. I authored that for us, and I will, and I'm constantly working on, different feature implementations and discussing with, Sunerok on how we can better enable our currency to better cater to a larger audience and not so shoehorned into one specific demographic. So I like to focus on the technical aspects as well as, some community engagement. I know I've been trying to herd the cats, if you will, in trying to keep peace on all of our platforms we have while we get our shit together here and really make a great project, And
I don't know. How long have you been involved in cryptocurrencies?
I've been involved in cryptocurrencies here since late 2009, probably. I mean, right in the early stages. So I've seen all of the strife happening on Bitcoin there, and been around for quite a long time, and didn't really actually start getting actively involved until a few years back when I ran into this project formerly known as Dogecoin Dark in the glorious IRC days.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And so, you've been through the altcoin booms and busts and the hype cycles and the different variants thereof. What really drew you to Dogecoin Dark, would you say?
I think for me the real turning point was how actively engaged Sunerok was with our small tight-knit community, and even back then seeing what he was trying to accomplish and really enabling people to have a choice and also a chance to not only acquire a currency, but be able to, spend it or use it as they choose. We would be in IRC and, for me, for instance, I'd come in with a couple million coins and we would just have a fucking rain party and everybody would have a good old time. And it was fantastic. It was, I don't know, it's just a real sense of camaraderie and, the original vision. It just, it really talked to me in a sense.
Would you say there's been anything different as far as the attitudes of the people that have drawn to it?
I do see that we do have a wide variance in community members nowadays. Like I said, I try to be active in the platforms as much as I can, but given the foot traffic and the sheer volume of what we're trying to get accomplished, my time's been pretty divided, if you will. But as far as, the original feeling is still there. There are definitely some negative connotations when we do have the occasional jackass that comes in and starts talking shit, or, like, oh, this is all vaporware. It's like, you don't fucking know what's going on, man. Get out of here. I got time for that. Nobody's got time for that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that's endemic with all crypto projects, that you always have that one guy coming in saying, oh, this is all a Ponzi scheme. This is all bullshit. It's like, dude, this is year 4. I mean, we're a little bit along for a pump and dump coin, don't you think?
Well, it's not only that, right? But we as a currency are definitely, overall topic aside, we as a currency are definitely in infancy stage. All things considered, like, we've got huge leaps that we're going to be doing here in the future, and we've got a lot of growth that we need to accomplish as a coin. But to your point, we're not a fucking pump and dump, man. We've been here for years. We've seen all the shit, and we know what works and we know what doesn't work. And you know what? We're going to cater to what works. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, that's always been one of my how should I say this? One of my favorite parts about this has been the support community, specifically Sunerok and people like yourself, who, it's like, I've seen a lot of people come in and offer they can do all kinds of stuff for the coin and whatever, and they're there for a day, maybe 2, and then you never hear from them again, and it's like, we're still here,
Yeah.
You came and went. We're still here, and it's just it's funny to me that there's never been a real urge that I've seen, at least in Sunerok or anything, to try and rush things along just for the expedience and following along with the wiles of the market. Like if the market says, oh, we want Lightning Network stuff, he didn't just immediately jump out and say, oh yeah, we're gonna get that implemented into Verge Currency. He said, well, let's hold back and let's see how that works out for you, because what we're doing is working fine right now, but let's see how that works out for you guys first, and then we'll talk about maybe implementing it with us.
Well, it's certainly not to say that we're not, we don't. It's not like we don't have our ears on, per se. We definitely, we're definitely listening to our community. We're definitely, looking at the feedback, whether no matter how negative it is, and taking it into consideration. But I think one of the things that several members of the community may or may not know is that we're not just going to implement something because it's a fad. We're not just going to turn on some feature just because competition X is doing it. It's like we're not about that game, man. We're here to stay, and if people can't wrap their heads around that, then I hate to say it, but this project may not be for them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really a bold statement, and not because it's not something that's needed. I think if more projects actually adopted that attitude, that we'd probably be a lot further along than just trying to, say yes to people as long as it's popular, and then say no to them as soon as they become unpopular, and and try and maintain some sort of clickism or something like that. Trying to stay into a trend or stay in a positive light, no matter what it actually does to your product.
Yeah, I don't. Sunerok. He's never been, the type of folk that's going to want to be in the fucking spotlight. We're going to do what's right for not only, our vision, but for, what we feel is going to benefit the majority rather than the minority in the instance of somebody looking to get rich quick.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of new implementations, I understand there's the Wraith protocol coming out today.
Yes, the ever-present bane that we have been tirelessly working on for months, it seems.
What can you tell us?
Go ahead.
Well,
we've got we've got quite a few features coming out tonight, and we've got a few features that we are going to be really pushing forward on testnet to get out here in the next couple of days. But for like tonight, for instance, we will definitely be seeing, where's my little chart here?
Oh, so you guys do have a schedule of stuff that you intend to put up, like when you intend to have it up?
So tonight we'll definitely be seeing a overhaul of our UI. We've got atomic swaps, we've got encrypted messaging via Visp, we've got Bloom filters, faster sync, an overall general user experience upgrade for sure. And as we progress through this week, we will, as we test it, and ensure that, we can't just enable a feature and expect it to work flawlessly. Like, we don't want to implement something that's going to cause an issue. So
yeah,
as we get through our testing here, we will implement the optional stealth addressing and the Tor. But we definitely want to make sure that our users are going to have a nice, smooth, clean experience. We've been taking everybody's feedback on our wallets into consideration, and we hear everybody loud and clear. We definitely are looking to solve many of the daily issues we are seeing right now.
Well, and one issue that I've noticed come up repeatedly in the IRC, and I was kind of impressed to hear you actually mention it, is the syncing, the wallet syncing. What kind of things did you guys do to adjust the speed on that, or get that to happen faster? Or was that
so on our we've basically turned on what would be Bloom filtering, and on the backside there, that's going to shrink the amount of data that's being downloaded, to put it into simple terms. So basically, when you open your wallets, normally you would sit there for a while where it'd be like loading block index. Well, now that loading block index is significantly shorter. So, we've cut that down dramatically, where it only takes, 30 seconds tops, maybe 30 seconds to a minute to load up. And then once you get inside, you'll find that the blocks are actually syncing faster because of some voodoo magics on the back end, so to say, without diving too much into the technical specification of that.
Right. So now, when you're talking about the Wraith protocol and the new implementations you guys are putting on there, like, what kind of process are you guys going through with regard to, like, discussing what you want to put on there? I mean, like, is it a user based reflection kind of thing, like what people are asking for, or are you guys kind of really shooting in the dark with ideas that you had that you wanted to try and implement?
I think it's more along the lines of, we've been doing, so Sunerok and I will do some deep dive investigative research, on things such like, ring CT, something like that. We've looked at that, and we've looked at a couple of other implementations, and we want to make sure, at least on our side, that we have a full understanding of what it is, if it has vulnerabilities, and how we can implement something similar to it while fixing the vulnerabilities that exist. So for our process, so like, to clear the air on this, Wraith protocol is more of a compilation of updates, if you will. So we release, say, stage 1 today, which includes everything that I talked on there. And then from that point forward, it enables us to have a nice foundation, really go back and build upon this concept of, we want to provide our users with the capability of disappearing. We want to be able to say, if I wake up one day and I want to send Joe X number of coins, and I don't want anybody to know about it, well, I want to be able to just flip a switch and send Joe some money, and nobody's going to know that Joe got some money. You know what I'm saying? So our general thought process right now with regard to Wraith is that we want to, like I said, build this foundation, be able to evolve upon it based on our findings and based on things that have been proven. So we're not just implementing things that are like abandoned or just things willy-nilly. We're definitely putting a lot of thought into what is being implemented in our currency.
Right. Nice. And so now, what kind of interest have you guys seen from other parties, like other vendors and whatnot, with regard to using Verge Currency as a means of monetary transfer?
Oh man, I mean, as you're aware, we've had our lovely vendor Peppers. Garrett has been kind and gracious enough to accept Verge Currency as payment for his products, but it seems, as we've grown here in the last couple of months, that you can see on our website there, we've got 12 vendors as of today, and I just put this vendor page up late Sunday, and I am constantly getting people messaging me saying, hey, we're accepting Verge here, can you add us on a slot on your site? And I mean, you'll see that, if you wanted to, you could go to Chicago and adopt a new friend through the Have a Heart Dog Rescue. They accept Verge Currency, and you can buy some products for your beer. You can, it's just more and more people are coming out of the woodwork to say, hey, we accept Verge because, we really enjoy the project, we believe in the project, and we really want to support what you're doing.
Nice. Well, and so now, how has that been for you? Like, watching the coin evolve and the community around it evolve over time like this.
Well, honestly, it's really, it's going to sound cheesy, but it's really cool. It's really cool for me to sit here and just watch this evolve. I mean, we've been working on it for years. I mean, mainly, Sunerok had been working on it for years, but I mean, to see it go from what it was to what it is now and what it's going to be, it's incredible. And, we have a fantastic community to thank, and we wouldn't be where we are without the people we have supporting us. That's what it boils down to. So, I mean,
well, I that's one of the reasons why I called you on here, man. Really, because I'm watching it from like inside and outside. It's like I see you at it, and I mean, it's funny because I see comments from some of the people that aren't as deeply involved and whatnot, and they say things like, we've done the math, and you guys don't sleep. It's like, when do you find time to do anything else? You're always here.
Yeah, it's a challenge, man. I mean, for myself, I'm usually working a 12 to 14 hour day for my day job and still trying to manage this as well as work on the currency and try to keep my wife happy, which is an extreme challenge in itself.
Oh, I've been married. I understand that one.
I think it's what it really is we're putting our right foot forward, our correct foot forward. We're putting the work in now, and we're putting the hard hours in now, so that we can, like I keep kicking this horse here. We're trying to build a solid foundation, so that and at one point in time, we'll be able to really sit back and take our time and focus to make sure what we're doing is correct. Right now we're kind of like in a scurry, like, oh god, we got to do all this stuff, and we got all this shit coming out, and we got to do this, that, and the other, and we got to focus on this, and the Electrum's having issues, and this, that, and the other, and what the goal is to eventually, I mean, as you saw, we also rolled over to a quarterly release schedule, and on all of this is like slowly unfolding to not only make our release schedule more comprehensive for the community, but to also kind of alleviate some of the pressures of trying to keep up with the Joneses in the project, if you will.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that there is a kind of a mad scramble because, the cement really hasn't set on this whole thing. I mean, we're still waiting to figure out whether or not Bitcoin's going to stay on chain or go off chain, or what the hell's going on with that, or whether there's going to be level 2 or layer 2 scaling business, or I mean, like, with all that going on, like I don't know how I want to really articulate that. I mean, but it seems like with all of that going on, it'd be really easy to get sucked into something like that. I noticed with Segregated Witness, when that one started coming out, there were other altcoins that I saw that transferred over to it, but we didn't do anything similar to that, did we? Or did we not? I don't know. Did we do segregated witness? I don't think we
No.
did, but
No, we didn't touch that shit.
But I mean, where I was going with that is that with this technology and this industry being as up in the air as it is, I think a lot of other coins are still trying to establish themselves as viable projects away from everybody else. Whereas, Verge has stayed pretty much Verge. It was meant to be a privacy-based coin, and it's just been growing its features since then. Instead of trying to mimic what other coins are doing with their infrastructure, and I think that's one of the assurances of it. I kind of was talking to Vitalik about that earlier today, or I commented something and he tweeted back that. People would like to know what the hell your project is before they're throwing money at it. And if you're forking every other month, then what the fuck are they investing in?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, like for me personally, I try to keep my head down as far as getting involved in the political nature of what Bitcoin has seemingly turned into in the last couple of years here. Yeah. It's just insane.
Well, now, would you say it's changed very much in and of itself, or just the face of it?
I mean, we're still catering to what our original vision was, and
No.
as we've said before,
Verge. I wasn't talking about Verge. I was talking about Bitcoin.
Oh, I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit there.
Oh, it's okay.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, geez, I forgot the question. That must not have been terribly important.
What can you do?
What would you say has changed about Bitcoin more? The face of it, meaning the people representing it and what they're saying, or what it actually does?
Oh, geez, the face for sure, man. I mean, shit, when we first started out here, Bitcoin was nothing. Bitcoin was meant to be a easy to use P2P, or an online e-commerce based P2P currency that people could easily acquire to send funds to and from, right? That's what the original concept was.
Right.
And as it grows, as more outside influences get involved, as more big banks, big investors, larger groups get involved, it becomes less of a decentralized, people-friendly currency and more of a centralized, regulated, big business-friendly currency. And I think we're definitely seeing a major shift in the culture surrounding Bitcoin. Whereas back in the day, decisions were based upon the input of the mining community. Now, most of that input is controlled by large mining warehouses or external factors. I mean, just look at SegWit, right?
Yeah.
So...
Well, with regard to that, I talk about that a lot on this show, in that I don't think that things like the mining centralization in China are really going to be permanent features. It's not something that's baked into Bitcoin. But like, if you do change to segregated witness and you do change to off-chain transactions, that's a permanent change. That's
right.
So. I don't know. I've been watching it for a while, and like I said, I've said it a million times that the halls of Bitcoin's history are just covered with blood of the people that at one point or another had some sort of point of dominance in this game. Like Mt. Gox or Ghash.io, or where they come up, they get to a point where people feel threatened by them. Their customer base bails out on them, they lose their hash power or whatever, and they go away. They're no longer a threat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if the situation in China got to the point where it really threatens the Bitcoin ecosystem, that too would change in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I certainly don't doubt it. At least from my perspective, and I mean, you've been in this game for long enough, you know how it goes. It's going to definitely be interesting to see where we land. As I've always said in the past, Bitcoin's cyclical, but I'm just curious to know at what point do we start losing the common investor and start seeing more and more federal regulation, not only on, Bitcoin itself, but to start trickling into the altcoin market? When are we going to start having to deal with, some of the same shit that Bitcoin's going through on the day-to-day?
Yeah. Well, I do think that's a present threat, something certainly to be concerned about. But in reality, though, I think that's one of those points where we have to remember that these are global systems, and even in places where we have seen really draconian control measures trying to be put in, what happens? The ecology of the market changes a little bit, and then we just keep going. Like with regard to like China, where they blocked off their legal Bitcoin trading houses, and what happened? People just started trading over the counter. It didn't really change anything. We thought the world was going to end with this lack of demand from China, and what happened? The liquidity got sucked up in all of like a week and a half after the dip.
Yeah, it didn't take much time at all. People found other channels and said, fuck the system, and we just kept on trucking, man. That's how it's been. But, to that point, it's just like, where's the break point, It's, again, this is just, personal speculation at this point. But
well, I did want to ask you also, what is your other job?
Well, without going too much into it, I'm a systems engineer over at Cisco. So I work on a team that supports events globally. So I'm constantly working on back-end infrastructure, networking infrastructure. So I have a pretty strong background in enterprise technologies. So that's definitely helped me navigate some of the fields in cryptocurrency. But I'll tell you from my perspective, it's definitely a different animal.
Now, have you seen any kind of interest within Cisco for blockchain or cryptocurrency?
There has been some interesting conversations that I've been privy to, but it's not been anything, from the top level down. It's just been conversations in passing and how, Cisco or some of the other people in the field may be able to use blockchain to their advantage. Not really anything concrete, not really anything to spark a conversation about, unfortunately, but it's definitely been brought up. There's a lot of eyes on blockchain tech and Bitcoin right now. So
yeah, well, I had the fortune of going to a HP held hackathon, and at the time, I think it might have been either 2014 or 2015. Bitcoin had not hit $1,000 yet, and I really got the impression that it wasn't much on their radar at all. And as a matter of fact, I've gone to a lot of trading houses like legacy traders and whatnot, like Charles Schwab, the investment brokerage. And I've gone in there and tried to talk to them about Bitcoin, and the kind of reactions that I get are just like, I don't know how to explain them, dude. I really don't. It's like, some of them have like chased me off like I was a Jehovah's Witness trying to sell them on God or something. It's like, I'm not trying to sell you anything, man. I'm just trying to tell you how to make money.
Just trying to have a conversation, man.
Just a conversation. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I don't have any product to sell. But literally, I asked and I thought the reaction might be a little bit different, only because of their relationship with digital currency transactions, and that's pot dispensaries. And I just started mentioning it to this guy at the register, and saying, gosh, this would have been so much better if I could have done this with Verge or Bitcoin. And he's like, oh, Bitcoin? And, I tried to explain it to him, and the manager comes out of nowhere. We're not interested. Get out of here. I was like, whoa, dude.
0 to 1,000 in 5 seconds. What happened?
Oh, no, we're making money on our money. Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting, and like you've said, I have seen it from the very beginning to where it is now, and I sometimes wonder about the ability of any government to get a hold of this, and the thing that drives that belief is like Zimbabwe and Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela's on the verge of just completely ditching their government and starting a new economy just among themselves with cryptocurrencies. And so it was one of those things where the government did resist it for a short period of time until they realized that the cops were just taking the miners home and setting them up at their houses. And then they're just like, yeah, maybe we'll just let this thing run its course. Maybe we'll just get out of its way. And you know, you've talked a lot about vision, and I was wondering if you care to disclose to us your particular vision for where you see Verge going in the future.
Well, you know, from what I mean, there's a variance between what I'd like to see and what's actually going to happen. But you know, as far as the overall thought is, we want to bring blockchain to everyday users, and what that effectively means is, you know, as you've seen, there's a lovely sports bar, Reno Sports Bar, that accepts Verge. And you know what? If I want to go buy a beer with Verge, I should be able to buy a beer with Verge. So, and to extrapolate on that, you know, we want to grow the currency such that, you know, we do have a public ledger, but that also, you know, enables us to be accepted through, you know, merchants, everyday merchants. So we want to see Verge, you know, widely accepted as many places as it can be, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, big box retailers. It could be the small independent businesses, you know, that's perfectly fine, you know. Just to see Verge, to see people to be able to go and to spend Verge on everyday necessity, I think that would be, you know, fantastic. Obviously, that's a huge goal, and that's more of a personal perspective, honestly. But, you know, to have that, and to obviously to enable our users to feel comfortable in sending their money to and from, you know, their particular clients, or have a business be able to privately transact their money and know that, you know, their information isn't going to be disclosed. I think that's, you know, going to be a really big step forward for us as well.
Cool. Well, gosh, man, it's been a pleasure having you on here. Was there anything else that you really wanted to lay out before we close this one out?
You know, I think it stands to be said that inside of our Telegram community and all of our other platforms, you know, there's always these people that'll come in and say, oh, it's just a giant hype fest. It's like, well, you know, I don't think people really grasp the concept of what we're trying to accomplish here. It's like, you know, with Wraith in particular, it's like, it's a large update. There is a ton of features coming in Wraith, and people don't understand that, right? So, like I said, we've got our atomic swap capabilities, we've got, you know, our encrypted messaging, we've got, you know, several different large features that are coming out that are going to enable our users to have a better experience overall, you know. And it's a project. It is a growing, living thing. So to have this like crazy expectation that everything's going to be done on this day at this time, exactly, it's like, dude, it's fucking insane. Like, you got to understand that it is a living, working project. Like, we are working to make this thing awesome, but it takes time. So I think, you know, on that note, it's just, the only thing I'd have to say is, you know, the patience in our community is greatly appreciated, and I just want everyone to know that we're working, you know, as best as we can to make sure that we're delivering a quality product and not some just other shit coin that you can buy on the market, you know. That's fucking awesome, excuse me, but, you know, we just want to make sure that we're delivering a quality product.
No, we appreciate the fucking awesome here on Coin Metal. Don't you dare apologize for it, sir. Well, good, man. I like I said, it brings me a little bit of comfort to know that there are guys like you and Sunerok that are driving behind this coin. And I'm absolutely certain that we wouldn't be here where we are without it. And I would like to thank you for that, because I know you do a lot of corralling of kittens. And, I do get what you're saying, like with Wraith. I mean, how long did we hear in Telegram, when Wraith?
Oh, jeez.
And I mean,
oh, man.
Hey, it's easy to succumb to that, only because that's the level of expectation that has been set for crypto. It's like somebody sees a mention on Twitter, and it's like, oh, is this out yet? Do I get to take advantage of this on the market yet? Or, and so, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of it's speculative driven, but I think you're kind of right there with regard to expectation that, people do expect a lot. And I mean, the one big setback I think that we've had though was Sunerok having Florida demolished by the hurricanes. I mean, that set him back quite a ways. So, I think where you're at now, even considering that and what kind of material loss that was for him, I think it's just amazing that you're still, on the verge of throwing down some significant protocol updates.
Yeah, and I personally, I really appreciate your sentiment and your comments there. It's definitely nice to hear. It is definitely it's a little demotivated sometimes to get into Telegram and to see some of our day trading community, and they're like, where the fuck is this? It's like, well, it's not that easy, guys. I mean, as much as we want to churn out stuff for you, it's just like, we gotta really ensure this works, because if we hit one wrong thing, or we implement one wrong line, or screw something up, it screws everybody up, man. It's not just one person, it's the whole fucking community, right? So it's not an easy thing.
Right.
I mean, I can't stress that enough. It is not easy to implement these features.
Yeah. Well, so we certainly do appreciate your support on that, and Mr. Sunerok, of course, and we look forward to having you on the show again sometime.
Definitely. We'll definitely have to do this again. This was very enjoyable. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on your show, and it's been a pleasure talking with you, Frank.
My pleasure, sir. You have an excellent evening.
And you as well. Take care.
All right. And so that was Mr. CryptoRekt. And I'd once said to him in Telegram that if Verge were a body, Sunerok would be the mind, and he would most certainly be the heart. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and throw back down into a little bit of music, and then we'll be getting into some articles, because I did try and get just a teeny tiny bit prepared before this epic show. And so let's go ahead and throw down a little bit of Fear Factory here, and why not Demanufacture here on Coin Metal. And that was Face Value by Prong. And I haven't had an opportunity to check out the price on Bittrex yet. I'm too involved in trying to give a decent interview to Mr. CryptoRekt. That was certainly a pleasure having him on here. It's been a while since I think we talked one time a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I could be wrong on that, though. Oh, wow. Looks like we're coming back up the mountain. Yeah, boy. Gotta watch which side of the trade you're on with that business. Definitely. Anyway, as I had indicated, I do have articles. And we talk about this a lot on this show, but it's only now starting to get mentioned in the media, the popular media, as a motivating factor for the increase in price of anything, and that would be fiat inflation. And I have an article here by Mr. Ron Paul, or actually it's on Zero Hedge by Tyler Durden, according to this. Oh, wait a minute, here it is. You know what? We're just going to go to the source. It's being aggregated by by Zero Hedge, but it's in fact on the RonPaulInstitute.org website. And this is Ron Paul's weekly column. And I'm going to make a prediction. I believe he will mention Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies at least once in this article. And this is GOP tax plan increases the most insidious tax. And this is written by Ron Paul, Monday, November 6, 2017. Last Thursday, congressional Republicans unveiled their tax reform legislation. On the same day, President Trump nominated current Federal Reserve Board Governor Jerome Powell to succeed Janet Yellen as Federal Reserve Chair. While the tax plan dominated the headlines, the Powell appointment will have much greater long-term impact. Federal Reserve policies affect every aspect of the economy, including whether the Republican tax plan will produce long-term economic growth. President Obama made history by appointing the first female Fed chair. President Trump is also making history. If confirmed, Powell would be the first former investment banker to serve as chairman of the Federal Reserve. Powell's background suggests he will continue Janet Yellen's Wall Street-friendly low interest rates and easy money policies. Powell is an outspoken opponent of the Audit the Fed legislation. In 2015, Powell delivered an address at Catholic University devoted to attacking Audit the Fed. Like most Fed apologists, Powell claims the audit would compromise the Fed's independence and allow Congress to control monetary policy. However, like all who make this claim, Powell cannot point to anything in the text of the audit bill giving Congress any power over the Federal Reserve. Powell's concerns about protecting the Fed's independence are misplaced, as the Fed has never been free of political influence. The Fed has a long history of bowing to presidential pressure to tailor monetary policy to help advance the president's political and policy agenda. The Republican tax cut plan has some positive elements, such as increasing the standard deduction, creating a new family tax credit, eliminating the death tax, reducing the corporate tax rate, and lowering taxes on small businesses. It also has some flaws, such as the millionaire surcharge imposed on upper-income taxpayers. This provision reflects a belief that upper-income taxpayers only, quote, deserve a tax break if reducing their taxes serves the interest of government by increasing economic growth. The worst part of the tax plan is that it adopts the Chained Consumer Price Index, the chained CPI. Chained CPI is a way of measuring CPI that understates inflation's effects on our standard of living. It does this by assuming inflation has not reduced American standard of living if, for example, people can buy hamburgers when they can no longer afford steak. This so-called full substitution ignores the fact that if individuals viewed hamburgers as a full substitute for steak, they would have bought the hamburgers before Fed-created inflation made steak unaffordable. Chained CPI increases the inflation tax. The inflation tax may be the worst of all taxes because it is hidden and regressive. The inflation tax is not even a tax on real wages. Instead, it is a tax on the illusory gains in income caused by inflation. The use of chained CPI to adjust tax brackets pushes individuals into higher tax brackets over time. I bet you anything that's meant to catch Bitcoin hodlers. You know, that they think that they're going to be able to go back and find out where you bought your Bitcoin, and then tax you according to what your capital gains are since then. Fuck them. That's not really going to work. The use of chain CPI to adjust tax brackets pushes individuals into higher tax brackets over time. Politicians love the inflation tax because it allows them to increase taxes without having to vote for higher taxes. Instead, the Fed does the dirty work. Since their creation in 1913, the Federal Reserve and the income tax have both enabled the growth of the welfare warfare state and the erosion of our freedom and economic well-being. The key to restoring our liberty and prosperity, as well as avoiding a major economic crisis, is reversing the great mistakes of 1913 by repealing the 16th Amendment and auditing and ending the Federal Reserve. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I don't know, I'd never even considered the inflation tax, but that would be something to consider if you actually intend to transition back into fiat currencies. Because if you do, you will realize a financial gain. Okay? See, I don't have to worry because I've done a little bit of transactions in Bitcoin this year, but the fact of the matter is that the profits that I realized still keep me so low below any kind of fucking taxation that I don't have to worry about it. I mean, I can claim all of the money that I actually quote unquote made on Bitcoin, but it only matters, the profits that I make, they only matter from when I actually made the profit to when I realized it in fiat currency. You see how that works? And so it's really important if you do enough of your business in cryptocurrencies, it's really important to hold on to your receipts, because if you are ever audited by the Fed, you can, or not the Fed, the IRS rather, if you're ever audited, they would be able to scan the motherfucking receipt and tell exactly when the transaction occurred. Do you understand what kind of difference that makes as far as accountability is concerned? You can say to them explicitly, look, I got paid exactly this much. Can you see how much ass rape I got there? Can you see how much minor fee I paid on there? That's a business expense. Thank you very much. I'm going to be deducting it. You know, that, and I think that this process has never been easier. It's never been made easier. You know, if you were to make another transaction and say you never even realized it into Federal Reserve notes, it would still be taxable if you realized some material profit. So, you know, the guy that bought a Lambo with 40 Bitcoins, Jim Blasco, I guess, he would only be taxable for the equivalent amount of cash, of US dollars or Federal Reserve notes, that would have bought that vehicle. And so he could fudge it just a teeny tiny, you know, tell him that he bought one that didn't have all the features, but even then, that would be trackable. They would be able to trace it back to the individual car as it left the showroom floor and tell exactly what options were made available on that vehicle. So, you know, accountability. I mean, this is the kind of thing and the exact reason why banks will not adopt public blockchains. It's why they hate Bitcoin as it functions right now and will not use it unless they've got this layer 2 bullshit. Okay? And I really think that should tell you something about them. These are people that obviously cannot play a straight game. Why try to cater to them? They're clearly going to abuse their position again, and this time they're going to be hurting you if you're transacting in cryptocurrencies. So now, why exactly do you want to make your system to where it functions with their system? Big whoop-de-doo, they got the money, right? But their money is going to be relatively worthless pretty damn soon if the Fed keeps up with this bullshit printing. And they have been printing. Don't let anybody lie to you on that one. But I don't know. It's going to be really interesting because the energy market, the global energy market, is something I try to pay a little bit of attention to. And certain free spigots of oil are being dried up right now. And I wouldn't call it quote unquote free because the people that were living there had to be bombed or evacuated first. But we don't count those kind of costs because that would be fascism, right? First you bomb them, then you sell their stuff back to you. That's fascism. Anyway, I digress. The gray market and black market oil that's been coming out of Iraq, as they've been able to contain more and more of ISIS's shit and get them away from the oil and whatnot, those sources are drying up. Same thing in Libya, same thing in Syria. And I expect that trend to continue. And we only have so much of that infrastructure over there, and I think it's going to be tougher and tougher for us to maintain it. Now, there have been technological advances in military that I'm sure have enhanced our ability to retain those resources or control over them. But even that, all of it takes money, you know? And if you don't have enough of an economy to support it, it's going to go away. You know, I mean, even if you're trying to maintain it via illicit drug sales and shit like that, that dries up after a while. Either A, you kill off your customer base over time, especially with cocaine and heroin, or B, they run out of money and they sober up. One of the two. You know, they run out of rope. You know, they end up on the street or whatever. Point being is, it's not an everlasting thing. And there's not enough people going to be falling into it because they don't have the kind of economic security that they would need to consider using drugs or heavy drugs to be a very viable option. They're going to be too concerned with trying to make enough money to put food in their mouth. You know? Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And as far as what to put on right off the bat, I haven't the slightest clue, but let's go ahead with Du Hast. It's always a good one in a pinch, right? A little bit of old school corn there for you. Blind. I'm still kind of riding on the wave of having Mr. CryptoRekt on here. That was pretty cool. It's a little bit unusual, and I treasure it when I actually do get some guests on here. So anyway, as I had indicated before, I do have multiple articles. And this one, I thought this was so awesome. I've never been a fan of Bjork, and I don't know that I'm a fan of her work now, but I'm definitely a fan of her as a person, because this is pretty fucking awesome. This is on Cointelegraph, and let me make sure this is actually on Cointelegraph and not on somewhere else. Let's see here. Checking and verifying. Alright. I think we're all cool. Bjork's latest album, available with Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies, shows adoption. And this is by John Buck. It was written November 5th, 2017. Here we go. Known for embracing all things edgy, musician Bjork has announced that her latest album, Utopia, will be available for purchase through cryptocurrencies. The artist will accept Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dash, and audio coin. Hopefully she'll be accepting Verge soon. The move by the musician may seem like a marketing strategy of sorts to appear unique and to draw attention during a time when Bitcoin's rise has brought cryptocurrencies into the mainstream. However, according to Kevin Bacon of Blockpool, quote, "This really isn't a marketing strategy with Bjork. This is a decision to be a leader. In fact, it's just the obvious thing to do for her. If I wasn't involved in this project, I'd expect Bjork to be a leader in this area and for her team to be doing creative things with crypto. Virtuous Satoshi cycles. An adoption of cryptocurrency as adoption of cryptocurrencies increases, the price and number of transactions increase, causing greater price stability, and stability increases mainstream adoption. This process of adoption and stability has been referred to as a Satoshi cycle and is the underlying driver for the increase in Bitcoin price." Bullshit. Bjork's album offering is simply another step in the ladder of adoption and stability. As the cryptocurrency market continues to gain traction, prices follow the adoption curve and drive the adoption curve concurrently. Now, see, the thing that you need to do now, girl, is you need to start accepting other cryptocurrencies. Because as you adopt other cryptocurrencies, other people will too. I mean, I think it's inspiring that she is taking Bitcoin as a means of buying her albums. However, I think that she might have some issues with regard to that containing the number of people that can actually buy her album, or are willing to separate with their Bitcoin. They'll be more likely, I think, to be buying it with audio coin or Dash or Litecoin. And I don't know, maybe if she gets smart, she'll be adopting other cryptocurrencies. It just seems natural that would be the progression. I mean, like Ethereum. It's kind of funny that isn't even mentioned on here, and yet Dash is, despite the fact it's pretty centralized from what I understand. I could be mistaking it for Ripple though, so please don't quote me. Anyway, but yeah, I think that this is the way to progress with regard to adoption. And as a matter of fact, CryptoRekt mentioned it while on the show that we do have multiple vendors that are accepting Verge Currency now. And so, I mean, that to me that's the bee's knees. That's the end goal, is to facilitate people being able to do commerce with one another in places and in ways that they never could before, And so, yeah, hats off. This is a very good move, I think, by Bjork, and I would like to see other artists kind of try to adopt this way of going about things. I mean, when I look at the music market, I really don't have like any insider information about how the inner workings actually operate. But I can tell you this, that I see within cryptocurrencies the potential to pay artists for their actual performances in such a way that they would actually be able to make enough money from performing alone to do that, rather than having to depend on record sales or merchandise sales, that they would be opening their I don't know, the idea I have would allow them to open up the audience base to the entire planet, so that you could be in like Uzbekistan and be watching a Bjork concert live and be paying for that. Now, I have seen some talk about streaming services that want to charge you by the second and whatnot. I think that's kind of ridiculous, but where I do see a good thing a good way to take advantage of Bitcoin and whatnot is to make it a flat fee. So like, $2. If you're some Uzbekistani kid and you want to watch Bjork, $2 in whatever cryptocurrency you want to pay in, right? Or that they're willing to accept, whichever the case may be. And I would leave that up to the temperament of the artist and, of course, the organizers and or whatever service provider that they're using to be accepting the payments and facilitating the transmission of the concert, live streaming it. But I mean, all of these things are possible right now. These things have been possible since, since 2012. We've had the infrastructure, I think, that would be able to handle what I'm talking about. But in the age where we're seeing kind of an end of interest for many sports, like football and baseball, and they go through their ebb and flow, where one will be more interesting to people than others, like basketball or soccer or hockey. They all go through different cycles where one will be more important than the other. And it's not just dependent on their season. A lot of it has to do with what people can actually afford to do. If you can't afford the $100 or so for the Dodger ticket or something, you're not going to go to a fucking Dodger game. You might watch it on TV. But now what if you could tune into it from, some angle, be able to watch it from whatever angle there's a camera viewing it on for $2. Well, fuck, man, you'd have a watcher base. I mean, a viewer base of some 200 to 500 million people at any one time, because then you're not just contained to the continental United States. You're all over the frickin' place. People in South Korea be watching a fucking football game. $2. I want my $2. I don't know. Some of you would recognize that line, but others of you would not. Anyway, so yeah, I think Bjork's onto something. She's definitely showing us the way, and it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Whether or not we see other artists that try to do that. Now, we have seen other artists try to get into the ICO game, and we have seen other artists get into the altcoin game, but to various levels of success. Like the one that I think about the most is Kanye. I don't know if you guys remember that one or not, but somebody decided to release a cryptocurrency without telling Kanye West about it, and called it Coinye, and next thing you know, he was suing them, which I wouldn't have done. I would have just said, "What are you guys doing over here? you guys using my likeness? Gonna have to pay me. Everybody else does. So do you. None of this. It's just an altcoin bullshit." But I did see some celebrity endorsements of ICOs, and that's something that I always worry about. Is that people will use those as their adoption cues, is the word of celebrities. I mean, because that always hyperinflates people's expectations. It's like, oh shit, Madonna's doing it. Pfft, I got to do that shit. And it doesn't matter if it helps you as much as it helps Madonna or not. You'll try it if that's the kind of driver that pushes you. And these are the kind of people that lose a lot of money, and it sours on them. This technology suddenly becomes just a scam to them because, of course, they got scammed because they were stupid enough to listen to Madonna or Kanye or whoever the fuck it was with regard to buying a cryptocurrency or investing in an ICO or some other shit. Anywho, let's get back into articles here. And I had a few of them sorted out, but I clicked and clicked and clicked and got a whole bunch of others, and I didn't want to do that. And this one is something that I've expected something like this to happen, only because there's a lot of political shifting around right now. And that's why you're seeing stories about pedophiles and shit, and you're seeing Saudi princes getting blown up and shot and things like that. Is the power base is shifting. And I have talked to a couple people about this, where like the political parties here in the United States kind of keep a tight wrap on things, where they just pass it from one presidency onto the next, the dirty trove of secrets, that they hold over one another's heads. And I'm sure Trump took a look at that and said, okay, we're going to get rid of this pedophile thing because we don't like it. And so they've been hammering down on pedophiles. Well, whether it was intentional or not, I don't know, but it seems like they're nuking a lot of the economic base of the Democratic Party. I mean, invariably there's going to be some blowback, but under the moniker pedophile, I don't really care. If they're screwing children, I don't want them in office. But the point being is, this is the kind of thing that, the kind of political token that's been held over a lot of people's heads for a while. And now that we're seeing that the promises, the big black book of dirty secrets that they have on everybody has been handed on to somebody who isn't interested in maintaining certain poles of power within DC and beyond. If it would have been handed on to Hillary, we never would have heard shit. Harvey Weinstein would be testing somebody out right now on his couch. And nobody would have been the wiser. But now that somebody who isn't interested in what Harvey Weinstein has to curry as far as favor and currency, he's no longer useful in the whole regime, and so now he gets bumped, and we're seeing this avalanche of other Hollywood heavy hitters that were all being kept hidden by these backdoor agreements, where they had certain things on politicians, and politicians had something on them, and as long as each party had something to offer the other as far as protection or asset, that relationship would stay fine, and the secrets would stay fine. But as soon as there was a major disruption in Washington, which happened with the election of Trump, a lot of people lost their political token. A lot of their juice just became vinegar, because it wasn't valuable to anybody else that was now occupying the stage around them as Trump's transition team and now his administration have come into office. And he's still having some trouble filling some positions, I guess. I don't know if it's due to lack of interest in them or whatever. I would hope it is. I mean, that's just like he looks at those cabinet positions and he's like, that's not according to the Constitution. I'm not going to fill it. That person wields too much power. I'm not going to fill that position. I think that would be fucking awesome. And these are the points that they don't talk about on CNN, because they don't talk about it on CNN. They don't talk about it on MSNBC or any of those other media creations, because they are intrinsically involved in this shit. I mean, how many times did we see, some raging, hardcore, radical, fucking conservative or liberal, come into the system and try to apply their philosophy and their principles and expectations to what they were experiencing in Washington and in the big media circus, and they find out they can't do it. It's too much of a sacrifice of their integrity to do it. And so what that tells you is that there's a whole machination of interpersonal politics that maintain an edifice of fucking crap on one another. And when we're seeing these big shifts in politics, we see it reflected back into the market as well. Now, so far we haven't seen any real big impact with regard to banking and whatnot, but I don't doubt that we will in the short future. I mean, that eventually some of the arrests that are being made in these supposed pedophile ring busts and whatnot, that they'll eventually bleed over to both parties, and we'll start getting into finance, and then that whole thing will fucking unravel. But what we're starting to see already, though, is some people dispensing of their vinegar, and I think this is kind of an indication of it. This one's on BBC News. Paradise Papers. Tax haven secrets of the ultra-rich exposed. And this is by Paradise Papers reporting team, BBC Panorama, November 6, 2017. Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary is shown to have a stake in a firm dealing with Russians sanctioned by the U.S. The link, dubbed the Paradise Papers, contains 13.4 million documents, mostly from one leading firm in offshore finance. BBC Panorama is part of nearly 100 media groups investigating the papers. Follow live updates. As with last year's Panama Papers leak, the documents were obtained by the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung, which called in the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists to oversee the investigation. The Guardian is also among the organizations investigating the documents. Sunday's revelations form only a small part of a week of disclosures that will expose the tax and financial affairs of some of the hundreds of people and companies named in the data, some with strong UK connections. Many of the stories focus on how politicians, multinationals, celebrities, and high net worth individuals use complex structures of trusts, foundations, and shell companies to protect their cash from tax officials or hide their dealings behind a veil of secrecy. The vast majority of the transactions involve no legal wrongdoing. Other key stories released on Sunday were: number 1, a key aide of Canada's PM has been linked to offshore schemes that may have cost the nation millions of dollars in taxes, threatening to embarrass Justin Trudeau, who has campaigned to shut down havens. Read the full story there, and we may. Lord Ashcroft, a former Conservative Party deputy chairman and a significant donor, may have ignored rules around how his offshore investments were managed. Read the story there. Other papers suggest he retained his non-dom status while in the House of Lords, despite reports he had become a permanent tax resident in the UK. How acquisitions were raised about the funding of a major shareholding in Everton FC, an oligarch, and then the next one here is an oligarch with links to the Kremlin, Asher Usmanov, may have secretly taken ownership of a company responsible for anti-money laundering checks on Russian cash. The The other media partners may be covering different stories affecting their regions. How is the Queen involved? The Paradise Papers showed that about $13 million of the Queen's private money was invested offshore. It was put into funds in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda by the Duchy of Lancaster, which provides the Queen with an income and handles investments for her $500 million private estate. There's nothing illegal in the investments and no suggestion that the Queen is avoiding tax, but questions may be asked about whether the monarch should be investing offshore. There were small investments in the rent-to-buy retailer Bright House, which has been accused of exploiting the poor, and the Thresher's chain of off-licenses, which later went bust, owing $17.5 million in tax and costing around 6,000 people their jobs. The Duchy said it was not involved in decisions made by funds, and there is no suggestion the Queen had any knowledge of the specific investments made on her behalf. The Duchy has in the past said it gives, quote, ongoing consideration regarding any of its acts or omissions that could adversely impact the reputation of the Queen, who it says takes, quote, a keen interest in the estate. I should certainly hope so. The BBC's royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell says it is extraordinary and puzzling that the Queen's advisors could have felt that it was appropriate, quote, for somebody whose reputation is based so much on setting a good example to invest in these offshore funds. Questions will now be asked inside Buckingham Palace about how that decision was made, he added. Oh, I'm sure. Embarrassing for Ross and Trump. Wilbur Ross helped stave off bankruptcy for Donald Trump in the 1990s and was later appointed Commerce Secretary in Mr. Trump's administration. Well, dude, he helped him out with a solid there, of course. The documents reveal Mr. Ross has retained an interest in a shipping company which earns millions of dollars a year transporting oil and gas for a Russian energy firm whose shareholders include Vladimir Putin's son-in-law and two men subject to U.S. sanctions. It will again raise questions about the Russian connections of Donald Trump's team. His presidency has been dogged by allegations that Russians colluded to try to influence the outcome of last year's U.S. election. He has called the allegations fake news. I do too, by the way. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal has called for an investigation, telling NBC News that Mr. Ross had given Congress the impression he no longer held shares in the shipping company. Quote, our committee was misled. The American people were misled by the concealment of these companies. Yeah, whatever. Questions for the UK government. Opposition politicians have said that the government must stop, quote, dragging its feet and curb the use of offshore tax havens, and Labour Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell has called for a public inquiry. But at the CBI conference on Monday, Prime Minister Theresa May did not commit to a public inquiry. She also did not directly answer when asked whether she would insist on British overseas territories publishing a list of who owns companies and trusts registered in Crown dependencies. She said that the UK government was working with its dependencies to ensure we're seeing greater transparency. Where does the leak come from? Most of the data comes from a company called Appleby, a Bermuda-funded legal services provider at the top end of the offshore industry, helping clients set up in overseas jurisdictions with low or zero tax rates. its documents and others, mainly from corporate registries in Caribbean jurisdictions, were obtained by Süddeutsche Zeitung. It has not revealed the source. The media partners say the investigation is in the public interest because data leaks from the world of offshore have repeatedly exposed wrongdoing. In response to the leaks, Appleby said it was, quote, satisfied that there is no evidence of any wrongdoing, either on the part of ourselves or our clients, adding, quote, we do not tolerate illegal behavior. Read the Appleby story there. What exactly is offshore finance? Essentially, it's about a place outside of your own nation's regulations which companies or individuals can reroute money, assets, or profits to take advantage of lower taxes. These jurisdictions are known as tax havens to the layman, or the more stately offshore financial centers, OFCs, to the industry. They are generally stable, secretive, and reliable, often small islands, but not exclusively slow, and can vary on how rigorously they carry out checks on wrongdoing. The UK is a big player here, not simply because many of its overseas territories and crown dependencies are OFCs, but many of the lawyers, accountants, and bankers working in the offshore industry are in the City of London. It's also about the mega rich. Brooke Harrington, author of Capital Without Borders, Wealth Managers and the 1%, says offshore finance is not for the 1%, but the 0.001%. Assets of around $500,000 or $300,000 London dollars, I guess, would just not meet the offshore fees, and these schemes would need. The offshore fees the schemes would need. My apologies. Are we taming offshore? What is the effect on us, and should we care? Well, it is a lot of cash. The Boston consulting firm says $10 trillion is held offshore. That's about the equivalent of the gross domestic product of the UK, Japan, and France combined. It may also be a conservative estimate. Critics of offshore say it is mainly about secrecy, which opens the door to wrongdoing and inequality. They also say the action of governments to curb it has often shown to be slow and ineffective. Brooke Harrington says if the rich are avoiding tax, the poor will pick up the bill. There is a minimal amount of governments There's a minimal amount the governments need to function, and they recoup what they lose from the rich and from corporations by taking it out of our hides. That was Brooke Harrington, by the way. Meg Hiller, UK Labour MP and chair of the Public Accounts Committee, told Panorama, we need to see what's going on offshore. If offshore was not secret, then some of this stuff just couldn't happen. We need transparency and we need sunlight shown on this. Oh, man, the yawns are catching up to me here. What is the defense of offshore? The offshore financial centers say that if they did not exist, there would be no constraint on taxes governments might levy. They say they do not sit on hordes of cash, but act as agents that help pump money around the globe. Bob Richards, who was Bermuda's finance minister when Panorama interviewed him for its program, said it was not up to him to collect other nations' taxes and that they should sort themselves out. Both he and Howard Quayle, the chief minister for the Isle of Man, who was also interviewed for Panorama, and whose crown dependency plays a big part in the leaks, denied their jurisdictions could even be considered tax havens, as they were well regulated and fully conformed to international financial reporting rules. Appleby itself has in the past said OFCs, quote, protect people victimized by crime, corruption, or persecution by shielding them from venal governments. Wonder which ones they're talking about there, huh? Find out more about the words and phrases, blah, blah, blah. Your browser does not, blah. The papers are a huge batch of leaked documents, mostly from offshore law firm Appleby, along with corporate registries in 19 tax jurisdictions, which revealed the financial dealings of politicians, celebrities, corporate grants, and business leaders. The 13.4 million records were passed to German newspapers and then shared to the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Panorama has led research for the BBC as part of a global investigation involving nearly 100 other media organizations, including The Guardian, in 67 countries. The BBC does not know the identity of the source. Yeah, so, wow. And apparently, American companies do this too. Might have to look into that one. But yeah, this is, again, somebody's currency ran out, you know? There was somebody at the Isle of Man that they had something on somebody, maybe Kevin Spacey or some shit like that, I don't know. And they could whip it out whenever they wanted to and wave it in front of people's faces and say, hey, you know, we're going to leak this stuff if you push any further regulation on the Isle of Man. And, you know, they comply. Well, you know, now you've got Donald Trump in there, and so when you wave that shit in front of his face, he says, he fucked kids, get rid of him. Get rid of him. I don't care. I don't care how many good movies he's made. He's fucking kids. Pardon me, I seem to be coming down with a cold, man. Occasionally when you gather with 400 people and get sweaty in the mosh pit, that happens. Oh well. But yeah, so like I was saying, the credibility of this, I would put it at 100%, and it's probably a lot worse than they're actually bothering to mention. But yeah, it's somebody's big trove of shit was dumped on Trump's desk, and right now he's just going through it saying, okay, let's get rid of these guys, let's get rid of this bullshit, let's get rid of that bullshit, let's get rid of this tax haven, let's get rid of that tax cut. And I'm sorry, that's what happens whenever there's a big power shift like this. The favors, the currency, they run out. You're not necessarily able to keep the same deals that Obama was willing to honor, and Bush was willing to honor, and Clinton was willing to honor. It's just not happening now. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And with regard to what to put in, I'm feeling Fear Factory again, but we've already played a little bit of that. So we've hit Body Count. We haven't played any of the Black Dahlia murder tonight. And that's not right. Let's go ahead and throw down their title track of their latest album, Nightbringers, here on Coin Metal. And that was War Ensemble by Slayer. And so I do have a couple little stories that I can get by with on a last little bit here. And I'm trying to think of which one I want to do. Because I got one here, and then I got another one that I'm just as eager to put out there. Well, fuck it. Let's go with the one that's more immediate as far as I'm concerned, to our concerns here. Although the other is about chips and the manufacture of them. So, I don't know. We may yet get to both. You never know. Anyway, here we go. Hold the fork. And this is on Coindesk.com. Hold the fork. No 2x, but everything else goes at Scaling Bitcoin event. And this was written on November 5th of 2017 by Pete Rizzo, clearly by the name Penis. Bitcoin is the currency of enemies. If adversarial thinking like Taj Drya's was on display, its target was relegated to theoretical targets on day one of Scaling Bitcoin Saturday. Held this year at Stanford University, the event's 4th edition first started to bridge Bitcoin's then scaling crisis, saw noticeably less discussion of issues currently facing the open source project's roadmap. For example, despite its dominance in the media headlines, a scarce few panels address the concept of forks, or suggesting at all that competing Bitcoin-based cryptocurrencies may be able to outpace Bitcoin in terms of technology or user adoption. Indeed, the absence was noted by attendees, who framed the conversations as positive and optimistic on the future of the project, as recent attempts at such efforts have largely failed. Quote, to developers, a contentious fork is not even a possibility, Wayne Bogan, CEO of blockchain startup Tyrion and conference attendee, said. Quote, everyone is focused on what they're going to build on top of Bitcoin. In fact, the most prominent reference to the controversial SegWit2x software set to be introduced to the network in weeks came from Bobby Lee, CEO of Bitcoin startup BTCC and a proposed supporter, who told the audience he would not answer questions on the subject. Rather, Lee focused his stage time on a crowd-pleasing talk heavy on typically safe subject matters, namely Bitcoin's advancement in the face of governments and the asset's rising price, both of which gloss over the widely differing views on the effort. In this way, this year's edition of Scaling Bitcoin was perhaps distinguished by the lack of immediacy under which the talks were given. With the SegWit code change enacted in August, although not utilized yet, there appeared a silent consensus that short-term pressures had been relieved. This indifference was present as the ways in which the more theoretical changes would or could be introduced to the network appeared secondary to results that simply hinted at the current state of science on the subject. In one talk, Johns Hopkins University's Ian Myers presented Bolt, an anonymous payments channel design that aimed to speculate on how payments channels or the top-level networks now possible with the introduction of SegWit's code could have more discrete intermediaries. Yeah, third-party intermediaries in a fucking system designed to operate without third-party intermediaries. Fucking assholes. Myers noted, however, that Bitcoin's rules would need to change to accommodate the proposal, though he displayed a disdain for the more political specifics. Whether this is a hard fork or a soft fork, I've long since stopped paying attention to that discussion, he told the audience, meaning, I don't give a fuck about consensus. Fuck consensus. As scheduled, payment channels were one of the more visible topics of the day, with 3 sessions focusing on how these proposed layers could become more private. More privately owned. Leading off was Purdue University's Pedro Monero. my apologies, I conflated that. Marino Sanchez, who gave an overview of current designs for the Lightning Network, the most mature version of payment channels for the Bitcoin network, and one that while now faces possible implementation challenges. Lightning Network payments by design only settle to the blockchain and therefore have a different proposed design structure than the network itself. And that's why researchers fear what might happen when the hub-and-spoke network is finally launched, with peers colluding to identify and defraud users who seek to exchange in the new kinds of relationships afforded by the design. Quote, "It's not clear what this channel will look like. If all the peers on the path collude, they can't identify you. Even worse is you ending up in this setting whether everything is centralized, you don't have to worry about I'm sorry, hold on. I'm going to restart this sentence because it seems poorly constructed. Even worse is you end up in this setting whether everything is centralized. You don't have to worry about collusion," Myers said, explaining the current challenges. He added, quote, "The reality of the matter is that centralized Lightning might be worse for Bitcoin privacy-wise." It's worse for Bitcoin all-wise, but you want to focus on privacy. Whatever. Continuing on. To help deter those outcomes, Monero Sanchez and Myers talks focused on zero-knowledge techniques, an older cryptographic concept that now seeks to allow parties to verify information is accurate without exchanging sensitive data. Marino Sanchez's work, conducted with 4 other Purdue researchers, presented 2 implementations of payment channels based on a new type of smart contract, while Myers was an iteration of work first introduced in 2016, now more relevant given that the Lightning Network is closer to launch. Hasn't even been launched yet. Elsewhere, Lightning white paper author Taj Drija gave a talk on discrete log contracts, work that hints at how so-called oracles or third-party data providers could operate within Lightning networks, setting conditional payments between users, such as might be wanted for insurance payments or casual betting. All focused, however, on the exchange of information between parties and the optimal conditions under which interactions would occur to maintain beneficial properties of Bitcoin transactions conducted on the more transparent Bitcoin blockchain. Fuck you. On-chain again? In contrast to past years, the event also proved open to the discussion of topics that may have proven taboo, a decision that appears to have led some conference organizers and former supporters to boycott the conference this year. Notably not present were many developers from Bitcoin Core, the software's most widely used client. For example, Peter Risen and Andrew Stone, developers most known for their work on the alternative Bitcoin software, Bitcoin Unlimited, presented research supportive of the idea that Bitcoin could or should be reimagined to feature larger blocks to enable payments. However, minus a terse question and answer session, Risen and Stone's talk received a warmer welcome than it has in the past. In Milan, for instance, the developers went so far as to stage a local offshoot event to present their work. And while the developers didn't step back from their assertion that the limitation of Bitcoin's block size and transaction fees are negative, they did better fit their ideas to the format. In this case, the developers presented data on the rate at which transactions can be accepted into Bitcoin's mempool, in this way evolving their past work on block propagation or how the network might pass larger blocks between peers. Risen and Stone's work appeared open-minded in light of past criticisms that have presented larger block proposals. Presented larger block proposals as ones that would perhaps weaken Bitcoin's network of nodes or the computer clients that store full copies of the Bitcoin blockchain. Rethinking attacks. As of note was the inclusion of talks on Bitcoin's proof-of-work consensus protocol, the aspect of the technology most relevance to the cryptocurrency's mining industry. However, here too, the conference showed signs of past divisions, with relatively little participation from miners this year, including only one, BTCC, that plays a decision-making role in whether the protocol upgrades its software. Elsewhere, Min Chen, CTO at Bitcoin mining chip manufacturer Canaan, continued the company's more recent positive public relations push with a talk that positioned the company as open-minded to alternatives to proof of work, notably given the anger in the technical community over the actions of miners in the past. Chen's talk came off as well-intentioned, if light on specifics on how the company would push the network toward this goal. Still, it's perhaps best to consider the talks as a showcase of a different perspective, as Chen pushed back on the idea that miners should be always thought of as attackers as opposed to network participants that provide a useful resource. For example, Chen discussed how blockchain protocols have often sought to limit the abilities of miners rather than thinking about how they could assist in problems facing the network. Quote, protocols should be quantum friendly, not quantum resistant. If a quantum computer can bring 1,000 times efficiency to your system, it will reduce average costs, Chen said, at least appealing to the idea that the nascent field of crypto economics, the role of incentives, is paramount. I would agree. She concluded, it's important to make being a contributor more economic than being an attacker. That's absolutely correct, girl. That is absolutely correct. That's so to the fundament of Bitcoin that I'm surprised you actually have to mention it to a group of people that are supposedly working on Bitcoin. But apparently you did. Anyway, that was a nice little read. Gives us a little bit of insight, and I may scour it for Wednesday's materials. We never know. But anyway, let's go ahead and close out this episode. We will be back again on 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on RadioCrypto.com. And I will do my best to make sure I get this episode up as quickly as possible, as I'm sure many of you would like to hear what CryptoRekt had to say, if in fact you were not here for his portion of the show. In any case, let's go ahead and kick it back down to our last dance. And bounce is always good for this, so let's go ahead and throw it down. System of a Down, Bounce, Last Dance, here on Coin Metal. And until Wednesday, I want you all to trade safe, do your homework, and watch out for your bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Thank you for listening, and you all have an excellent evening.